I still remember that night as vividly as if it happened yesterday. The clinking of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, and the feeling of my heart tightening in my chest as I forced a polite smile across the table. My family was gathered for dinner, something that should have been warm and comforting. But instead, it felt like I was sitting in a room full of critics waiting for me to slip up. The air was thick with that familiar tension I'd grown used to, the kind that always seemed to surface when I spoke. It started, as it often did, with my sister, Tessa. She had just gotten promoted again, her fourth in 2 years, and the table buzzed with admiration. My parents couldn't stop gushing about her success, as though she'd single-handedly cured world hunger. Mom's eyes sparkled with pride as she said, "You've always been our overachiever, sweetheart. We just knew you'd go far." Then her gaze slid to me, her smile softening, but not kindly. "And how's your little job going, dear?" My little job. The one I'd worked years to get, the one that helped me support my son after my divorce, reduced to something small in a single phrase. I cleared my throat. Actually, we just launched a new community project for underprivileged students. I've been leading it for months now. Dad chuckled, barely looking up from his plate. "That's cute. Always helping out the less fortunate. Huh? Cute. The same word they used when I was 12 and made straight A's. When I got into my first choice college. When I bought my own car. Cute. Never impressive. Never important." Tessa laughed lightly. "You've always had such a big heart, sis. Not everyone's meant for the fast lane, right?" The table erupted in chuckles, except for me. I tried to laugh along, but my voice came out cracked and hollow. My son, Ethan, was sitting beside me, quietly poking at his mashed potatoes. He's 8, bright, kind, and too observant for his age. He could feel the shift in the room, the way my shoulders stiffened. I gently squeezed his hand under the table, hoping he wouldn't see the humiliation in my eyes. Then came the moment that truly broke me. Mom reached over to pour Tessa more wine and said, "You know, I always thought you'd be the one with the big career, Tessa. You were just born for success. Your sister was always the creative one. The creative one, the family's way of saying the one who never quite made it." The laughter that followed was soft, polite, and deadly. Each chuckle felt like a little cut. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Well, we can't all be born stars," I murmured. Mom's response was a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, dear. We're just proud of both of you in your own ways." In your own ways. Translation, you'll never measure up, but we'll pretend to be supportive. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Laughter that wasn't mine, stories I wasn't invited into, and the familiar ache of being invisible in my own family. By dessert, I was barely tasting the food. My mind was miles away, replaying every backhanded comment, every subtle jab I'd learned to swallow since childhood. I wasn't surprised anymore, just exhausted. When dinner finally ended, I helped clear the table as I always did, while Tessa sat in the living room scrolling through her phone, basking in everyone's admiration. As I washed the last plate, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, forced smile, a woman who'd learned to endure. And something inside me shifted that night. Not in anger, but in quiet resolve. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt, I was done. Done being the afterthought. Done letting their words define my worth. Done sitting at tables where I had to earn my seat. That dinner, the one that started with laughter and ended with silence, was the moment I decided things would change. The next morning, the laughter from last night still echoed in my head. Sharp, brittle, and hollow. The kind that sticks to your ribs long after the moment's passed. Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, swinging his legs as he ate cereal, and when he looked up, I saw it in his eyes. He'd felt it too. "Mom," he said softly, "why do they always laugh when you talk?" The question hit me harder than any insult ever could. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I tried to smile, to keep my voice steady. "Oh, sweetheart, they were just joking." He frowned, but it didn't sound funny. I turned away, pretending to tidy the counter, my chest tightening as tears pricked the corners of my eyes. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who make you feel the smallest? That day, I went through the motions: work, errands, answering polite emails, but my mind kept replaying that dinner like a broken record. Every smirk, every dismissive glance, every time I bit my tongue instead of defending myself. By the time night fell, something inside me had hardened. I'd spent years trying to prove my worth to people who'd already decided what I was, a background character in my sister's success story. But I wasn't going to let Ethan grow up believing this was normal, that it was okay to shrink yourself just to make others comfortable. So I made a choice. Quiet, steady, final. I stopped calling. I stopped updating them on my life. And when mom's text came, "We haven't heard from you in a while," or "Don't be so sensitive, dear," I'd type out replies I never sent. Weeks passed, then months. The silence between us grew heavier, but also, strangely, peaceful. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Without their constant judgment, my world became lighter. I started noticing things again. The golden light of early mornings, the way Ethan's laughter filled the apartment, the freedom of coming home to a space that didn't require performance. Still, part of me ached. There's an emptiness that comes from letting go, even when it's the right thing to do. Every family photo on the wall felt like a memory that no longer fit. One evening, as Ethan and I were doing homework together, I looked at him, his brow furrowed, his little hand gripping the pencil, and I realized something. I didn't want my son to inherit my silence. I wanted him to know that boundaries aren't cruelty, that sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's reclaiming yourself. So I began to pour everything I had into my work, into something that mattered. At school, I took on extra projects, led community events, and helped create after-school programs for kids like Ethan, children who needed a place to feel seen, heard, and safe. The principal noticed. My colleagues noticed. For once, the effort I gave wasn't dismissed as cute. It meant something. When we launched a mentoring program, I stayed late nights drafting proposals, building partnerships, and fundraising. Every late hour, every sleepless night felt like fuel. Proof that I could build something meaningful on my own terms. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for my family's approval. Because I realized the truth. Their validation was never a reflection of my worth, just a mirror of their blindness. Still, fate has a strange way of circling back. A few months later, an email came through my inbox, an invitation to a local education gala. My name was listed among the organizing committee, and as I read the event details, a small idea began to bloom in the back of my mind. Not revenge, not bitterness, just balance, a chance to reclaim my voice, to tell my story, not through confrontation, but through creation. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would lead to a night my family would never forget. A night that would finally make them see me. 3 months later, the evening arrived. The air outside shimmered with that rare kind of stillness that always comes before something big, a quiet promise of change. The community center where I worked had been transformed into a ballroom, strung with lights that glowed like soft stars. Guests were already arriving in elegant waves, their laughter blending with the soft notes of a jazz trio in the corner. It was the night of the annual education gala, the one I'd helped organize, planned, and poured my entire soul into. But for me, it was more than a fundraiser. It was the night I'd reclaim my story. Every table gleamed with crystal glasses and ivory roses. Each centerpiece held a small card with gold lettering that read, "The Ethan Grant Scholarship for Resilience and Excellence." I remember running my fingertips across those words, my son's name, printed bold and bright for the world to see. That name carried everything I'd fought for. The late nights, the sacrifices, the quiet endurance of every time I'd been dismissed. Ethan stood beside me, looking around in awe. "Mom," he whispered, "it's so fancy." I smiled, smoothing his collar. "You earned this, sweetheart. This night's for you." He grinned, and I saw pure pride in his eyes. Not for the lights or the crowd, but for me. Then I saw them. My parents, Tessa, her husband, all dressed to perfection, stepping through the doors like they belonged everywhere. My mother's face lit up when she spotted me, that same polished smile she wore at every social event. "Darling, this is spectacular," she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. We're so proud of you for doing all this. All this. The same vague phrase she used for my entire life. Tessa scanned the room, her eyes landing on the scholarship banner. You named it after Ethan, she said, raising a brow. That's brave. I met her gaze calmly. No, it's right. Before they could respond, the event coordinator signaled that it was time. I took a deep breath as the principal walked on stage, microphone in hand. Tonight, she began, we celebrate someone whose work has changed lives, a woman whose compassion and perseverance created an opportunity for dozens of children who once felt unseen. Applause filled the room. My legs trembled as I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight bathing me in gold. For once, I wasn't hiding in anyone's shadow. I adjusted the microphone, scanning the crowd until I found my family's table. This scholarship, I said, voice steady, is for the quiet fighters, the ones who keep going when no one notices, the ones who learn to clap for others even when they've never been applauded themselves. A hush fell. The room listened. Sometimes, I continued, we tell people they're fine just because they don't complain. We forget to ask how they really are. We overlook the ones who stay kind even when they're tired of being strong. My voice broke slightly, but I didn't stop. I started this fund for kids like that. Kids like my son. And maybe for the younger version of me, too. I let the silence sit, heavy but cleansing. From where I stood, I saw Mom's eyes glisten, Dad's jaw tighten, and Tessa shift uncomfortably in her chair. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. When I stepped down, Ethan ran straight into my arms, wrapping them tight around my waist. You did amazing, Mom, he said. I just told the truth, I whispered back. The applause rose again, louder this time, echoing in my chest like thunder finally breaking a long storm. Later, as guests mingled and congratulated me, my family approached. Mom's voice was soft. That speech, it was powerful. Dad nodded awkwardly. You've really done something here. And Tessa, ever composed, smiled tightly. Guess we underestimated you. I met their eyes one by one and said simply, you did. Then I turned back to Ethan, who was showing his scholarship plaque to one of the teachers. His laughter was light, unguarded, pure. That's when I realized I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to understand the years of silence or the bruises their words left. Because in that room, under the soft lights and quiet music, I had already won. Not by shouting, not by proving them wrong, but by standing tall in the truth they refused to see. As we left the gala, I slipped my hand into Ethan's and walked into the night, the cool air wrapping around us like freedom itself. For the first time, I didn't look back. Because some stories don't need closure. They just need peace. And I finally had mine. The gala ended, but the echoes of that night lingered long after the lights dimmed. For days, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from coworkers, parents, even local journalists who wanted to feature the scholarship in their newsletters. For once, people weren't talking about who my sister was. They were talking about me. But my family's silence was deafening. Mom didn't call. Tessa didn't text. Dad sent a short message 2 days later. Proud of what you're doing. We should all talk soon. I never replied, because I knew what talk soon meant. It meant brushing it all under the rug, pretending the hurt never happened. It meant going back to being the quiet one who never caused waves. And I couldn't do that anymore. Instead, I focused on what mattered, the students, the parents, and the small victories that filled my days. The first time a shy kid won a debate competition. The moment Ethan got an A on a science project he built entirely by himself. The laughter that filled our little apartment when we cooked dinner together. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills still piled up. There were days I came home exhausted and wondered if I was strong enough to keep going. But there was something new inside me, a steadiness I'd never known before. I wasn't chasing anyone's approval anymore. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe closure, made me press accept. Her voice was gentler than I expected. I've been thinking about what you said at the gala, she began. About the ones who keep going quietly. I didn't say anything. She hesitated, then sighed. I didn't realize how much that applied to you. Maybe we didn't show it enough. For the first time, I heard something raw in her tone, regret. But I wasn't the same daughter she once dismissed. I didn't crave her apology anymore. I appreciate that, Mom, I said calmly. But I don't need it. There was a pause. I'd still like to see you and Ethan soon, she said softly. We'll see, I replied. Not cruel, just honest. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace, the quiet, weightless kind that comes when you finally stop needing to be understood by the people who never tried. That weekend, Ethan and I drove to the beach. It was cold, the sky pale gray, but we didn't care. He ran along the shore, chasing waves, laughing as they broke around his ankles. I stood there, watching him, the wind whipping through my hair, and I realized something simple yet profound. Every ending holds space for a beginning. That dinner, the humiliation, the silence, the hurt, had been my breaking point. But this was my becoming. Because the truth is, healing doesn't happen with grand gestures or perfect apologies. It happens quietly, in the small choices we make to no longer be who we were yesterday. And as the waves rolled in, I felt it completely. The woman I used to be, the one who sat at that dinner table, swallowing her worth, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who didn't need to be seen to know her value, someone finally free,